Hi everyone, thank you for making it today. So happy to have you all. I'm Sapna Wadwani and I am an executive team member here at the Indo-American Arts Council, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Ananta Ripa Ajmera, who is the author of The Way of the Goddess, Daily Rituals to Awaken Your Inner Warrior and Discover Your True Self. I hope you all can hear me. I'll speak a little bit louder. Thank you. Yep. So Ananta is an award-winning author, spiritual teacher, Ayurvedic practitioner, co-founder and CEO of The Ancient Way, an organization that supports you to embody ancient wisdom in a way that unfolds your true self. I also want to introduce you to Nidhi Pandya. Nidhi Pandya is a leading Ayurvedic practitioner, writer, and educator based out of New York. Her practice is unique because she has studied Ayurvedic directly from Sanskrit Vedic texts and can make them comprehensible and accessible to the Western world. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the discussion.
I'll just introduce you. This is an exciting conversation for me because I've been a part of this amazing book of Ananta's ever since it was in its initial stages, the writing, the thought process. I want to tell all of you who are here that this is a powerful book. Ananta is a dear friend and a fellow Ayurvedic practitioner, spiritual teacher. She does a lot of great work in the city. So in this conversation, Ananta, the goal is for us to really go into that journey that you bring about in the book. So for all of you, the name of the book is The Way of the Goddess, which addresses the 9 goddesses during Navratri. This is predominantly an Indian audience or of that heritage. So we've all celebrated Navratri or heard of Navratri, but in a very beautiful manner and a practical manner, Ananta enumerates, and we're going to get some of that wisdom from her today. So Ananta, the first question I want to ask you is, why this book, The Way of Goddesses? I mean, it's a topic, it's a conversation that we haven't heard of before. So I want you to talk about, why did you choose this topic? What was the motivation behind it?
Thank you. Can you all hear us okay? Is this working well? Okay. This topic, I feel, actually just chose me based on my own confusion around what goddesses were back all the way in childhood. I remember going to the Hindu temples and seeing all these depictions of goddesses and just feeling confused about them. No one really explained what they meant, why we had them, what their significance was for us, and it was actually really frustrating to not understand something that seemed really powerful and also mysterious. And I just kind of let the question go for a while because I was a kid and it didn't really matter. I was growing up here in the United States, so in my teenage years, after spending a lot of years in childhood going to India, we stopped going to India. I was more or less an American teenager, and then I came here to NYU for college, and I got really interested in how to give back to the world. I was always interested in living a life of service, and I felt that I needed to learn more about how to do that. So I was enrolled in business school, but I was a part of a social entrepreneurship program, and as part of that, they defined social entrepreneurship as creating this pattern-breaking, sustainable social change that can be scaled, and I had turned that definition of social entrepreneurship inside and asked myself, how can I create pattern-breaking change within my own life in a sustainable way and then scale that into the work I wish to do in the world? And with that question in my heart, I had traveled back to India at the end of my teenage years, and I remember researching girls' education organizations in India and going to the Gandhi ashram and meeting a young girl named Lakshmi. And I was so struck hearing her story and seeing how withdrawn she was, and knowing that she had gone through a lot of abuse in the community and her parents had sent her to this school to have a better future and to have a better life, to get educated, that here she had gone through so much, and yet she was named after the most widely worshipped Hindu goddess of wealth. And why is it that we are unable to connect the goddess that lives in the shrines of all the businesses and all the temples and the homes in India with the goddess that is within this girl, and that is actually within not just all girls and women, but I believe all beings. And so this new question had kind of arose from that experience. This was a really long time ago. This was back when I was in college, so it was more than 10 years ago, and that question about finding that goddess within really drove me to discover, first of all, what is the goddess, and to revisit that idea of the goddess, and to be able to not only see it on the outside as we do in the temples and to worship it from the outside, but to actually evoke that power as the divine spark that lives within us all. And I really feel that asking those questions led me on a personal healing spiritual journey. I feel like I saw a lot of my own childhood reflected in this young girl's experiences. Even though I had so much privilege to be able to grow up in the United States, I felt that, you know, I had also gone through a lot of this trauma and abuse, and I wanted some way to be able to digest it, to process it, and ultimately to transcend it. And I felt that this could be a way to that. So it was just a journey of questions that led me on a quest of exploration and discoveries, and then to a lineage-based study for many years in California to be able to go really deep into Ayurveda, yoga, Vedanta, and then, you know, coming back here. And the constant from all those years was just this idea of that divinity within us.
Wow, lovely. So what you're saying is that this little girl, Lakshmi, who had a life of hardship, and then you identified that disconnect, that growing up in India, we talk about goddesses, and you saw Lakshmi disconnected with her own goddess, and that made you question your own goddess and the goddess that exists within all of us. And then that sent you off on a quest. And then you kind of, I'm guessing that's when she talks about 9 goddesses. And I had a brief chat with Ananta, and I read her book, and it's like, it's a transformation, and then eventually transcend, you know, you transcend after you transform, kind of a thing. So Ananta, tell us a little bit that, you know, you talk a lot about the divine feminine, and I feel like it's a word used and thrown around as well a little bit. So can you talk about that divine feminine, how it connects to the goddesses, and then how does it connect to an individual as well?
For me, what I've understood as the divine feminine is actually that energy of transformation itself, and that ability to be able to become the most authentic version of our own selves. When we look at what is female, what is male, what's the difference, it's basically that a female could do anything that a male could do, but the opposite cannot be said.
Right.
Because only a female can actually have this power to give birth biologically. But when we're not talking about our biological selves, we're actually talking about energies. We're talking about the divine, which is ultimately beyond name, beyond form, beyond gender. Then I feel we can understand it as that energy that at a spiritual level is about birth, and is about birth giving, and is about giving us a second chance and giving us a fresh start in whatever area of our life we need that fresh perspective, that kind of change to come into. So in that sense, I don't really believe that the divine feminine is just something for females or female identifying people to connect with. I feel that it's that spark that lives within all of us, male, female, however we identify. Even if we don't identify with any gender, I feel that it's an energy that ultimately lives as our own potential to be able to become the best version of ourselves.
So in a way, Ananta, what you're saying, it's the ability to give birth to a new version of ourselves. And that ability is the divine feminine. Okay, now in going back to the book, Ananta, you talk about 9 days of Navratri. And I think this is an extremely useful, I felt like this was an extremely useful conversation, and it's a very useful part of the book as well, where you talk about each of these 9 goddesses, these 9 chakras, these 9 energies, and how we can transcend and transform ourselves at each one of these levels, and then they take you to the next and the next and the next, and you offer great practices as well. And then the journey you call is from darkness to light, which is as well as Navratri. So can we start at the bottom, the root, which you identify with the root chakra, and talk about what goddess that represents, and how is it that we get stuck, and how do we get unstuck? How do we take rebirth from all those places that we're stuck, and then hopefully offer everybody who's listening a couple of practices as well, which are easy and to take home, because I saw some really beautiful practices, and especially the mention of flowers and fragrances. I thought that was very powerful and underused.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so Navratri, I assume most of us have heard of it, but in case some people haven't, it comes from two root Sanskrit words, Nav, which means 9, and Ratri, which means nights. So it's like the 9 nights of battle that the warrior mother goddess Durga is fighting to then on the 10th night or 10th day overcome the greatest demon. And this is really symbolic of all the demons we have to conquer and face within ourselves to be able to realize the truth of who we really are. In the Vedic tradition, we understand that the identification that we have with our limited body and mind and our intellect even is what actually causes us to lose our way in life, because we forget who we are. We forget that we are eternal beings, that we are powerful beings who are here on a longer journey. So Navratri is really about coming home to ourselves and being able to awaken to these powers that lie dormant in each of our 9 chakras. So on the first night of the battle, Goddess Durga takes on the form of Goddess Shailaputri, and she is really an embodiment of Mother Earth. So maybe we could show the picture.
Yeah, I love that. She has some beautiful illustrations.
I had an amazing illustrator from the UK work on bringing these ideas to life and bringing the goddess hopefully into a more accessible format. And it was very important that there were all different kinds of bodies represented, different colors of skin tone, because I feel that in our post-colonial Indian tradition, a lot of it is like colonial mindset of what goddesses even should look like, and I feel that they should represent what we all are, which is diversity and differences that make us united and one. So this is Goddess Shailaputri, and she is Mother Earth, and she lives in our root chakra, which is where we connect to the earth. It's our seat. It's the first chakra in our body, and it's kind of at the base of the spine. And what we can do to ground ourselves with the root chakra is to literally even plant our feet into Mother Earth, because Mother Earth is what gives us the ability to be here, what gives us the strength to go through the fire of transformation. And the more we remember that we are supported, even just by the earth beneath us, the more we're going to feel that we can actually go on this journey. I think the first step and the first chakra itself is kind of the hardest, because it's even committing to going on this scary journey to deal with ourselves and all the things that we may have rather wanted to avoid. So the practices in this step are really simple, but they're really profound, and they really help us to reconnect in a very basic way to the earth. And we can also smell something. So we can also just cultivate that sense of smell, which in Ayurveda is connected to the earth element. And just by smelling your favorite flower or your favorite essential oil and really taking it in, really like closing your eyes and having that whole experience of being with that fragrance itself helps you to come into the moment and really be here right now in the present without thoughts of the past or worries about the future. So that's a really, really amazing way to begin. And then the second goddess in the second chakra, which is the goddess who lives in our reproductive area, or the sacral chakra. Maybe we can show her.
Yeah. Also, Ananta, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question to the first one, and then we can go to the next one as well. Yeah. So the first one you said is the grounding, is the grounding root chakra, where most of us are stuck. And it's before you get in this journey, you kind of ground yourself so you can elevate. So Ananta, I want to ask you, because I know you share a lot of personal stories and it's very inspiring. So where in your life did you feel, that you felt stuck and then you were able to get unstuck following these practices as well? If that's something that you want to share.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I was really stuck even in terms of what to do with my life after graduating college from NYU. I got my degree and then I just didn't know even what path I needed to go on. Was I to go into the corporate world, be working in Wall Street because I had a business degree, or did I feel that I needed to go on a spiritual journey? And I felt really called to that spiritual journey, and it was scary for sure in the beginning to go away from this kind of Manhattan life into the unknown. I went to India for 6 months after I graduated from college, and I went really deep into yoga, into a teacher training program that introduced me to Ayurveda, and I really could feel the difference in my body, in my mind, and in how calm and connected I felt to the earth. And I was like, wow, this is answering more and more of that question that I asked myself while I was in New York in college about how do I break these patterns that I know are within myself, where I am my own problem, I am my own, enemy in a lot of ways, and where do I begin, right? So it felt like I needed to just get my feet onto the path that was going to bring me peace, and it was a really brave, bold, courageous thing to do. I traveled by myself for 6 months in India, throughout Gujarat and Ahmedabad to Kerala to Rishikesh to the Himalayas and back, and I even did things I would probably never even do now, like taking trains by myself in the middle of the night. And I guess when you're young, you think nothing's gonna happen and it's gonna be okay, but fortunately it was okay, and I'm still here to be able to tell the story. But it was just like that fire within me that made me feel that, yes, there are different options here, and I need to follow the one. I need to get my feet onto the one that's actually giving me the relief that I can feel in my body, in my mind. And if I feel relieved by something, then this is what is going to become my work. I don't know how. I didn't have any business plan around it. I didn't have any ideas around it, but I just felt that I need to commit myself fully to my own healing to really be able to do this in a way that is going to be sustainable. Because I had seen so many people burning out in the nonprofit sector, in the social entrepreneurship world. It was like there's so much exhaustion that would happen, and fatigue and compassion fatigue and all of this, that it felt like it would be all charged up in the beginning and then lead to burnout. And I didn't want that same cycle to be repeating itself. I didn't want my work to be where I was figuring a lot of things out about myself. I wanted to feel that I could give myself the time to actually go within deep enough to find some healing and resolution, and then offer that as my gratitude into the world. So that was really my own intention, and I really was so afraid actually to share this with my parents in the beginning. And I shared this story in the first chapter itself, and the third chapter it comes up again too, because they had such particular expectations that, okay, you went to NYU, you went to business school, what are you doing with your education? And it's like, well, I'm just gathering information right now, I'm gonna be able to put these pieces together into a puzzle. I just trust. And the first step is really about trusting. It's really about trusting Mother Earth. It's about trusting ourselves. It's about trusting this divine connection, and that if we follow the path that leads us to inner peace, that brings us back home to ourselves, that truly gives us peace, then we can figure out how that can be the foundation for whatever we decide to do and however we decide to do that. So this was a really big first step, a very dramatic change in my life from being here to then going to India and kind of stripping away all the luxuries, all the comforts, all the predictability of life in Manhattan to something quite unknown to me, but felt really important because in my case was literally connecting with my roots, going back to India, which is where my family was living and finding out, what does this mean? What do all these things that I've always heard but never understood really mean? Because I trusted somewhere they can help me, if I can just unlock them and understand them.
So would you say that the word for the first chakra is then, like where you're stuck, so getting unstuck practices, and then you move on to the second chakra. So once you're unstuck, you can get into a more creative realm. And in that creative realm comes brahmacharini. So let's talk about brahmacharini and that second chakra. Once you found the grounding, you've been unstuck. So tell us about the second goddess, the second practice.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to show us her
Yes,
picture?
absolutely.
So this is Goddess Brahmacharini, and she is carrying with her a kalash, which is a copper vessel full of water, and a japa mala. And these are like her weapons. So all the forms of Durga have their own kinds of weapons that are there to help us destroy the demon in our mind and body, which is what we are falsely identifying with when we forget who we really are as a soul. So in different ways, we are fighting these battles, and with different kinds of weapons. We wouldn't normally think of a Nidhi, it really is. And I remember when I first committed that, okay, I am going to surrender to the practice of mantras, because my mind is a mess, and I need to channel this energy that I have and channel all this emotion that I have into something other than the circuitous patterns of my mind. So I'm like, the mantras, I don't know what it is, but I gotta do it. And I just felt this call that I gotta take it up and actually do it 108 times every day, because I don't even know what my mind is gonna become like after that. But I felt really excited about the possibility, because once I got my feet onto this path, that was so hard by itself, but I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm eating the foods, I'm grounding myself, I'm getting into the circadian rhythms, I'm feeling more connected to the earth, and now it was like a floodgate of emotions that needed to go somewhere. So I loved learning about the japa mala as being a weapon for gaining mastery over our own mind, because my mind was so anxious, so traumatized, so worried and nervous and scared all the time that this energy needed to go somewhere. And for me, it was really, really helpful to just practice the mantra chanting, and also the cleansing ritual of the water in the kalash. That has been so life-changing.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. We literally take some water into our hands, and we infuse the water with mantras, and we bless different parts of the body with this water. But what's really quite transformational is every day you can put a little bit of water in your hand and reflect on what is one emotion, one thought, one attachment, one situation that I feel I need to let go of, right? So if I, for example, had a lot of fear in the beginning, I worked on letting go of it tangibly by doing this practice, having my fear here with the water and just letting it go. I let go of my fear. And then maybe there was another thing that happened, I let go of that. Or it was just fear, or it was anger, or whatever was coming up. It was just like a daily way, in a brief way, to check in with myself and my emotions, and to make also huge changes. So I had to go through a lot of changes in my life and relationships, and getting out of every comfort zone possible. And I would always do it in this kind of like ritualistic way. Like, okay, today I let go of this attachment, which is not helping me, which is not serving me. And I talk about a relationship I had with a boyfriend in this chapter, and how, that actually taught me the value of brahmacharya and of channeling that emotional energy into sovereignty and into finding wholeness from within, finding that kind of relationship with my own self and my own higher self. And when we're talking about like the goddess and goddess Durga and Shiva, it's always thought of as being this romantic tale, but it's really about the seeker connecting with our own true self, our own higher self. And for me, I feel that this person was a great teacher for me to really go into that path and really find my own self, rather than get caught up in the codependent patterns, which are so common in relationships. And so I got to really live that brahmacharini lifestyle, of really consciously letting go of what was comfortable to go into what was not so comfortable. And because I did that, it gave me the ability to really channel the emotions into even writing books, into being able to start teaching eventually, to be able to share about our ancient culture that I had rediscovered in all different kinds of forums, like at Stanford School of Medicine and at UNICEF and NYU, and just doing a very different version of life than I may have ever imagined before. So this is a really powerful step to check in with, what are we getting attached to? What are our five senses going out and trying to grab? Is it ice cream? Is it our, some kind of show that we're addicted to watching? Or, where is our energy leaking out? And then being able to claim that back by letting go of whatever it is we're most attached to. Not forever, but basically whenever you can let go of something, then that letting go itself is what allows you to enjoy it without feeling compulsions around it. So this is a really, really powerful step. I feel this is easily the subject of a whole other book by itself, because brahmacharya really is the foundation of so much of our spirituality. And it's not just about celibacy or abstinence. That is obviously playing a really huge role, but it's about a total control over our mind and emotions, which are usually, running here and there and causing us our own problems, right? We are our own worst enemy, or we can become our own best friend, according to the Gita. And in this book, each chapter is actually centered around one of the verses from the Gita. So this chapter on brahmacharini and channeling your emotions is focusing on the verse from the Gita where we're talking about how what is like poison in the beginning becomes like nectar in the end. And what is like nectar in the beginning, like the ice cream and our, sensory attractions and people we may be drawn to, can become like poison in the end. So, really powerful step.
Lovely. So the second chakra is about creativity, finding your own patterns that don't serve you and letting them go so you can create space, because you can't be creative unless you create space.
Yes.
And so the two practices I'm just going to quickly summarize was, the water, and I know you and I talked about this earlier as well, where you take water because water holds a lot of energy. So I think they also go together, the mantra chanting, and that sound becomes so powerful as you keep repeating the same sound, just like sound bowls.
Yeah.
It amplifies. And when it becomes powerful enough, and then, you kind of infuse your sentiment into that water, either through mantra or just an emotion. And then if something you want to retain, you kind of bring it to parts of your body. If it's something you want to give away, you kind of let it go. And because water is known to carry, it's been this great energy source. Okay, lovely. And then once you get, once you're able to let go, then you have more power to create. And that power brings you to the third goddess, which is
Chandraganta. And Chandraganta is living in the solar plexus. She is connected with what we call in Ayurveda as Agni, which is the sacred fire of transformation and digestion. And we have to digest a lot of things in this life, not just food, although that's a huge part of it. We have to digest so much information constantly. We also have to digest our emotions, and we have to digest our life experiences. So this is a really, really important step of being able to see that all of these different things are connected, and that by being able to make peace with our emotions, with our life experiences, then we can also resolve any kind of issues we may be taking out through our relationship with food. And I really found this to be so true for me, because I had struggled with eating disorders and emotional eating patterns. And at this stage, I was really able to digest my childhood trauma around meal times as being a time of getting punished if I didn't eat everything on my plate, and being able to have a confrontation about this issue and how this had made me feel afraid of my dad for a long time. And I hid a lot of things, like the fact that I was studying Ayurveda for a long time from my parents, because I was replaying those old memories, and I had to explain how this is a cycle that was passed down from my father's father to him and then to me, and I had to make a choice that do I continue to do this old way of being, which is unconscious, or by actually bringing it to light, I'm actually choosing a new way to be with you, a new way to be honest and authentic and transparent, whatever that means as far as consequences go for it. But I also am freeing myself from this constant stomachache that I was having and that I couldn't resolve without having that dialogue and really just facing what was there at this really deep level. So that kind of transformation was so healing, and I tell that story, and it's just been so amazing and beautiful to see how my dad has really transformed as a result of this just confronting our family patterns and being able to together with the water ritual actually create a lot of new patterns of appreciation and gratitude around food and just a sense of, like I had to stand in my power, and by doing that and by choosing the path of spirituality that my dad really didn't think was a great idea and really fought me about, he really then has come so full circle to be such a great support of this journey and this path. And that was not something I ever expected would happen, but it was for me such a reinforcement of the power of really surrendering to that fire and what can come as a result of that without us even wanting it, expecting it, or knowing that that could actually happen. So this is a really powerful step, and we can connect with that fire by facing whatever we're afraid of, looking it in the face and actually roaring at it. So there's a lion's pose practice in this chapter where you literally imagine something you're afraid of, someone you're afraid of, something you're afraid to say, and then you imagine that you are the lion and you embody that power of the lion and you roar away whatever that psychological thing is that's in your own mind. And it just frees that fire to burn through the patterns and recreate a whole new situation that you can then digest. And it's just incredible how the mind, the body, and the emotions all just work together in this particular way.
So the practice is to kind of actually start practicing those things that you run away from and kind of develop the power, which I guess becomes possible when you worked on the first two, on the first goddess and the second goddess, when you've been unstuck and you found creativity and then you find power. And I think then that takes you to your heart space, Even in modern psychology, Ananta, right? They say that the lowest where you're stuck is guilt and shame. And then, once you kind of get done with guilt and shame, it brings some creativity and some ease, which is your second goddess. And then the third goddess is then you start feeling a little bit more courage, which can sometimes become anger.
Yes.
But when you transcend that, then you kind of come to your fourth, which is Kushmanda, goddess Kushmanda, which is also, by the way, this amazing Ayurvedic muscle building, nourishing substance. Kushmanda, it's a vegetable. So I love that. So talk to us about the heart chakra and this goddess Kushmanda.
Yeah, I love that, because in the first year when I had this confrontation and committed to the path of Ayurveda, yoga, Vedanta spirituality, I remember I had gotten really physically depleted from all the years of eating disorders, and I was recommended Kushmanda vegetable, Kushmanda vegetable, Kushmanda vegetable. So I literally ate it and I felt it, and it was such a nourishing experience on all these different levels. And it's one of the practices to actually eat like pumpkins or sweet potatoes or something really nourishing, heart healing, something that brings happiness to your heart. So it shouldn't be that health is a drudgery. We also have the spirit of celebration, that even as we're going through these hard steps and making these big changes and going through that fire, we also have a spirit of joy and a spirit of celebration of the fact that we're on this journey and we are doing this and we are going to have fun with it, and we're going to learn to find fun and find humor even in scary situations, even in difficult situations. And we're going to really connect with roses here and make ourselves some beautiful rose fragranced recipes and even bathe in roses. And roses are considered hridaya substances in Ayurveda, so they're heart healing. Hridaya means from the heart, and so we can heal our physical heart, we can heal our emotional heart by connecting with roses and by just cultivating this sense of joy and laughter. So when we see Kushmanda, she has the connection with the golden cosmic egg, and it's the egg of creation. Like all of creation comes from this cosmic egg of Kushmanda, and the way Goddess Kushmanda creates is by heartfelt joy, laughter, and smiling. So we can find Goddess Kushmanda smiling in our heart. And it's when we're smiling, it's when we're laughing, it's when we're joyful that we're going to be our most creative. And when we are joyful, health and happiness, Ayurveda sages have proclaimed, are one and the same. So that joy in that heart and cultivating that spirit of being able to smile even in the face of darkness, and to also to have the courage to feel when, say, the smile is not real, right? Just to allow the emotions to wash over us and cleanse our heart. It all is, returning us back to our source, which is actually love itself. So this is a really, really beautiful step, and she's one of my favorite goddesses who I feel very connected to in my heart chakra.
So Ananta, can you give us some more heart-opening practices? Because I'll tell you this, I think this is one of those areas where I think a lot of us, we constantly, I think living in New York, yes. It's a place of so much fear.
Yeah.
So, so roses was one.
Yeah, so roses is one practice.
Yeah, let's talk about some more heart opening practices.
Yeah, a really simple one that really helped me through a really particularly difficult time in my life during my spiritual journey was just a simple practice of putting my hand on my heart, and you can try it. You can put both hands on your heart with me right now, and just close your eyes and just repeat this mantra. I love myself unconditionally. I love myself unconditionally. I love myself unconditionally. And just take a deep breath through the nose. And a deep exhale, and just really feel your heart and really hug your own heart.